So with this last one with mobile devices, obviously components going to change a lot between desktop, laptop. Um, you do get down to really small parts because obviously the mobile devices, and because the mobile devices, battery life and size of the machine are quite important. So that is one of the biggest factors that they take into account when designing the phone. It's like how big can we get of a battery in there to fit in, and obviously the size of the actual phone itself. Now, obviously, you'll have seen that phones have become a lot thinner, a lot smaller to try and cope with the battery and size of the mobile device themselves. Um, they tend to have one board in them, so they tend to be a circuit on a chip. So it's obviously known as a system on a chip, which is a SoC. Um, they are very small, and obviously they can perform more or less the same things a computer can. But because obviously they're very small, they can only do so much. They can't. They're not going to be able to run very high level graphics or anything like that. They can do quite a lot of things, but when you get down to doing really complex calculations, they're going to struggle. So they can only do so much. But they tend to combine obviously a lot of the functions on a computer into one chip. So obviously they have a graphical output. They can do Word documents. They have applications that can do multiple different things. So they tend to be able to do the exact same functions as a PC, but just obviously on one chip. Um, Obviously, for mobile systems, because of the small size, they have to have a small power consumption because it's only a small chip. And obviously, this makes sense as well from a battery point of view. Obviously, you want your phone to last as long as you possibly can, so having a small chip also means that the power consumption is a lot lower than what it would be. Again, NAND flash memory, like I've mentioned in a previous video, is used for backing storage because obviously you can have it very small and it doesn't stop performance because obviously it's not a hard drive. Hard drives tend to be quite large. Like the hard drive would have to be bigger than the phone itself if you're going to have a hard drive in it. So flash memory is obviously the way to go with a lot of phones. An LTE is obviously going to be used to send and receive internet data because obviously it's on a small chip. I've left that at the end of this PowerPoint, so if you want to look up what an LTE is, please have a look at that. I'm not going to go over it because it's there for a reason. Um, but one other thing that could be looked at as a system on a chip is something like this. Now, a few of you will recognise what this is, but this is a Raspberry Pi. Um, Obviously, a lot of it is on one board. It has one chip essentially to run everything, and then everything else is just connections on it. So this would be considered a system on a chip device. It is quite small. It's probably no bigger than a phone, if I'm going to be honest. They are quite small, but these can do the exact same things as a PC could as well. But obviously, because of how tiny they are, they can't do everything. They can only do so much. But mobile devices tend to use system on a chip, which is SoC. That's something you will need to mention, and obviously you'll need to mention that because it's small, it doesn't have as much power consumption, and obviously it'll need to use flash memory in order to keep in the size of a phone, because obviously if you have a hard drive, it's going to be quite large. So bear in mind that mobile devices have to have very small components in order for it to fit into said device. But yeah, that's mobile devices again in a nutshell. Just make sure that you mention that about why they need to be the size they are and what sort of things they need to look at, like battery life and form factor and stuff like that. And obviously, flash memory. A lot of phones tend to rave on about how fast they're going to be or the resolution they're going to use. That tends to be quite a big thing now for a selling point. So a lot of manufacturers tend to stick to this because obviously they want their phone to be quite popular. Or mobile device doesn't necessarily have to be a phone. But yeah,